let's have our first poet of the evening, which is a bit of a special one. I'm really happy about this. We are able to welcome for you Eleanor Livingstone, who is the director of the StAnza Poetry Festival. It happens in St Andrews in March. I think it's March every year, is that right? Yeah. And it's Scotland's Poetry Festival. It's Scotland's regular yearly poetry festival. So it's absolutely fantastic to have the director of that along. But she is also a brilliant poet in her own right. She'll tell you a little bit about StAnza, but she's also going to be reading from her work. So please give a big hand for Eleanor Livingstone.
Which I usually do nowadays when I'm reading, so I need the specs. Thanks very much for that, Harry. It is a huge pleasure to be here in Craigmillar, and lovely to see a nice audience here. I've heard amazing things about the creative writing that's happening in Craigmillar, and that's wonderful. I started writing nearly 20 years ago in the local writers group in the Leaving Community Centre. So I owe a huge debt to local writers groups, and I can't commend them enough. And as Harry said, these days, I'm not writing so much nowadays, but I'm organising StAnza, which is Scotland's Poetry Festival. That means it is your Poetry Festival. Do come, I've left some of the brochures next door. It's 5 days, 14th to 18th March. 102 events. Yesterday there were 101, but there's another one sneaked in. Nearly half of them are free, and there's lots of participation opportunities for writers. So it would be lovely to see some of you there. I'm going to start off, we're talking about communities, so I thought I would start off with a poem about my hometown. I don't know if any of you know Leven in Fife. I wrote this poem about a dozen years ago when there was a sign at the petrol garage on the outskirts, the eastern outskirts, the western outskirts of town. I won't tell you what the sign said at the moment, but it made me, for some reason, think about the American Wild West. So this is Last Chance. Leven, Fife is nowadays a frontier town in modern east of Scotland style. Imaginary tumbleweed is blown by North Sea winds that taste of salt along the dual carriageway and past Banbeath Industrial Estate. Some mornings you can almost hear the rumble of the iron horse which used to ride this trail. Now, only stagecoach battles through. The tourists come to mosey down the promenade where one-armed bandits still hold sway. These days, the Indians are takeaways, but cowboys roam from door to door and drive hard deals in double glazing. Meantime, for the good, the bad, and others back on Main Street, music, loud with drink, spills out of each saloon, while cash tills play a tune which charade bluegrass. Fivers by the fistful buy you burgers, chips, the latest brand name trainers, for except line dancers, no one here wears cowboy boots. Still, it's a wilderness beyond the 40-mile speed limit. Night draws down the shutters and we circle round our digital TVs, tune out the wild coyote call. But if you dare to head out west where dust clouds gather in the next ridge of low pressure, check the neon sign. It says, last petrol to the Forth Road Bridge. Last petrol to the Forth Road Bridge. Nowadays, much more prosaically, it says cash machine inside. And there's been a bit of mention about history, sticking to sort of themes of community, but also going back a bit. I don't know how much you know about Fife, but I know Craigmillar Castle has connections with Mary Queen of Scots, and Mary Queen of Scots certainly has plenty of connections with Fife. Another famous Fifer was Alexander Selkirk, who was the original inspiration for Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, and he was born in the village where I grew up, in Largo. What you maybe do not know is that also the connection that Napoleon Bonaparte had with my part of the world. And there is a local legend in Methil that Bonaparte's cousin lived there. She was a milliner's wife, a Mrs. Peters. And there is actually there's some truth to the story. It's quite an interesting one. But when I heard people say, yeah, you know, Napoleon's cousin lived here, it gave me all sorts of things to think. The thing you should know, if you don't know about Napoleon, whatever you may know about him, he was actually a very strong family man. And when he became emperor, he made his brothers and sisters kings and queens of all the territories that he conquered. So his brother became King Joseph of Rome, and his sister was Queen Pauline of Brussels and so on, of Belgium. So anyway, this is the last king of Fife. His Methil kinsfolk welcome cousin Bonaparte and all his entourage with hospitality and some confusion. Feed them local fish and whiskey. Then for entertainment, send them off to tour the kingdom. Lower Largo first. Napoleon walks a mile in Selkirk's still warm footsteps, hands behind his back, parading up and down the beach, inspecting razor shells, columns of rock, each line of pebbles holding ground against the tide's advance, and skimming hard, flat thoughts of being cast away on one small island or another. The ex-emperor surveys the sea. St Andrews next, then Falkland, where the great man views the tennis court in which a queen, more French than Scottish, used to play her games. And staring down the centuries, he sees behind high walls and nets of intrigue, year on year captivity, spent waiting for the axe to fall. The day is warm, the gardens still in bloom, and Bonaparte begins to sweat. He'll never make it to Kinross, and anyway with Elba not so far behind, and St Helena the next port of call, he doesn't need to see that tiny island in its loch from where the young queen set out so disastrously. Instead, it's back to Methil for a farewell do, and full of cognac, scones and bonhomie, unmindful of the past, of changing times and circumstance, or lessons learned, Napoleon crowns his Methil cousins, King and Queen of Fife.
Thanks so much, Eleanor. Thank you. I love this idea of Napoleon and Fife. I really do. It's a fantastic